Now, these jewels and carved jades and ivories and so forth, I think are now situated in Taiwan, aren't they? Didn't Chiang Kai-shek take much of the treasure from the imperial China with him? I think they had been, if I remember correctly, they had requested that they be returned, and I don't think they've been returned yet.
Huh.
I think, well, you can imagine what they must be worth.
Yes, I can. Billions. And there's a picture of the Great Wall.
Did you have an opportunity to go on to the Great Wall and see that part?
We did. Just that part there in Beijing.
That's quite a sight.
And that's for those that, today refer to it as Beijing. In those days, it was either called Beijing or Peking.
Mm-hmm.
How it got to be Beijing, I don't know. Can you tell me?
Well, no, I don't know. Unless the communists, I'm sure, changed a lot of names.
Yeah. This was the pavilion on top of the, I think that it says Coal Hill, so there must have been coal there at one point in time. This was Temple of the Imperial World and the Temple of Heaven. This looks like the Summer Palace. No, it's the Winter Palace of Beijing. This is the Happy New Year Hall in the Temple of Heaven. Notice the religious connotation. I mean, this was, as I say, to the Chinese, it was of deep-rooted religious significance. This general view of the Summer Palace, this wall, the ceramics in this, though, this picture doesn't do it justice. You'd have to see it.
Mm-hmm.
But there again, once that disappears, they're doing everything they can to maintain it. But if they don't, it's a lost art. The marble tablet, and then this was that grand entrance we talked about, the main door, front door on Main Street. There's two pictures I don't have here that I'd like to comment on. One was Whispering Walls, and it was kind of structured like this, and there was a block here, and there was a block here, and then they were about 12 feet high, and then open to the skies. And you could stand facing that wall, and I'd stand facing that wall, and I could talk in a hushed whisper, and you could hear me loud and clear. Similarly, if you spoke to me. It's one of those things that they're unable to explain, even scientifically. They call it the Whispering Wall. The other thing was marble patio, if you will, or steps leading up to it from 360 degrees, and I'd say about 3 feet high. Here again, wide open spaces, and if you stood in the center stone, which was round, if you stood directly in the middle, and it had to be directly in the middle, and called out, "Bill," it would come back with an echo, "Bill." If you were a quarter of an inch off of it, no echo. Again, science cannot explain it, but it exists.
Then this acoustically was perfect that they had arranged, or you don't think it was an accident? They must have
no.
scientifically arranged it, but we don't know how they did it.
That's right.
I think there is a place in Washington, in our capital, that does the same thing. That supposedly under the rotunda, I believe, or in the House of Representatives, I think it's on the rotunda, that when you hear a whisper in one area, you can hear it in another area. So some of the senators used to sit there and were able to eavesdrop on the others. It's just an interesting story.
It is. It really is.
Well, you had an opportunity to shop and get to know a little bit of what the average Chinese was like?
Yes, we did.
What was that like?
Well, the missionaries advised us, because they took us into the shopping district, that there was nothing like we have here for entertainment in the way of, well, here we are on television. Prior to that, the days of radio, the days of the movies, Their entertainment was to crowd around the shops where people would go shopping. And so it was a little game you played, Bill. You'd go in and you'd kind of eyeball the shop and pick out what you wanted, and then you wouldn't talk about it, but you'd say to the shopkeeper, you know, well, how much is this over here? And you'd get a price, and, well, what's this? And then you'd get a price. And maybe about the third or fourth shot, you'd say, well, how much is that? And that's what you really wanted to buy. And you'd get a price, and then you'd go back, and you'd go, and it was just a process. It took, you know, easily a half hour.
Well, did they enjoy this, too?
Oh, yes. Oh, actually, they would look at us as fools. We had already been briefed. I happened to be in the communications end of things, and so we would it would be our responsibility to brief the fellows on shipboard as to what they should expect. In fact, this little informational pamphlet on Peiping covers, say, prepared by the War Area Services Corporation. Mm-hmm. And that kind of gave you an idea of how you should act. Well, to give you a direct what can happen, when we landed, we were told 5 cents for a rickshaw ride from where the ships were tied up to downtown, Peiping. No, excuse me, Think Sail. Within an hour, our boys had it up to $1. So this was the type of, and the Chinese looked upon that. They looked down upon it, like we were kind of fools if we fell into that.
Right.
And
weren't they kind of insulted because you didn't bargain with them?
Thank you. That's what I was trying to say. Yes, they were. They were.
No, they took it personally too.
Yes, really.
Right.
Yep.
They did throw you out of the shop. And
yeah. Oh, yeah.
You had an interpreter when you did this, when you went shopping?
Yes. Well, the group I was with were fortunate. We did have a missionary that had come back in after we made the occupation.
Yeah. You said the place too was not as clean as you would expect.
No.
Back home, but of course it was their way of life. You said were they picking things off of themselves or each other? Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Well,
you were curious about that, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. I couldn't understand why when they were talking with us, they were fishing into their garments, and then whatever they were fishing for went into their mouth, and the missionary informed us that they had a habit of eating their body lice, so I don't know how your viewers are going to enjoy that.
Well, I hope they've had dinner. But if they would do this, I mean, did you ever get an explanation of why they would eat the body lice?
No, it's just...
I mean, the food wasn't in that short a supply, was it?
No, I don't know. Maybe they felt it was protein. I don't know. But...
Well, it may have been. So that's one way to get rid of them, I suppose.
Sure.
What do you feel the Chinese were like at this time? Because this is just about the winding down for the war for them, I believe. Is that correct?
Well, the communists were making their moves. Mm-hmm. We didn't realize to what extent while we were there, but I mean, it became obvious within a few years, maybe even less than a few years, that the communists took over. Our reaction was, frankly, that they needed something of a dramatic change, Bill, and they were not getting it under Chiang Kai-shek. It was not happening.
Well, there was just two classes, wasn't it? The rich and the poor.
Poor.
Yeah, and of course there were many more millions and millions of poor
yes.
than there were rich, certainly.
Certainly.
I think, if I remember correctly, too, wasn't it that at the time when they wanted to divide up the land, because of the rich had such a control over it, they owned most of it.
No.
But the people were very friendly.
Oh yes.
Basically at that time.
You surely were.
And they still are today. We've still had